Hey folks, how you doing out there? It's Doc Kane coming at you from Kobe, Japan on May 19th, 2021, day 7 in the podcast. Woohoo! We hit a week. Today, let me tell you what the podcast is about. So, what is the podcast? The podcast, marketers who can't market. Because marketing is tough and there's a lot of things we need to learn. So, this podcast is designed to help small business owners get over these marketing humps, so you can get on with building your business. Lots of things to learn as we kick the tires on things and see what works and what doesn't work. And today, I wanted to share with you what I think will be a weekly thing, which will be my weekly roundup of books that I'm reading. Sure, people do this. I'm not always sure they read the books, but I do. And I read a lot of books, and I thought, and it's always changing, and they're not all business books, and there's something to learn in most of them, if not all of them. I tend to get kind of lucky, and I've been doing it a long time, so I'm choosy, and I wanted to share some of the things that I'm reading with you this week, and hopefully they're of benefit to you. So we got a couple business books in this list today, and a few non-business books, because I read both. And my wife and I run a translation company, and she's always trying to get me to read more fiction because I write fiction, right? So it's good to read it, and we do read. We read something every night, actually, and we have for 2 years probably now, close to 2 years. Read something every night before bed. I'm like reading bedtime stories to myself and my wife. It's fun, and we're reading Dickens right now. So one of my favorite stories was always A Tale of Two Cities from Charles Dickens. And so we're going through it now. We're about a third of the way through. It's difficult. Dickens is a tough nut to crack, especially the first part of every chapter. First page or so is quite difficult, and he's setting scenes based on a very specific point in time. He's writing this book, I think, nearly 100 years in the future from when the events took place, and I'm reading it 200 years later. This book is almost 200 years old. That's crazy. But it's a wonderful book, and there's a lot to learn in there with regard to life and storytelling in particular. So if you're listening to this podcast and have any sort of interest in copywriting or storytelling, I mean, all of our websites are really all about story anyway, right? I always used to be amazed at how much money people would spend as a writer. I always used to be amazed at how much people would spend on putting together a website, and most of what they would spend money on back then, 10, 15, even 5 years ago, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, was all graphics, right? These days, it's somewhat commoditized. I mean, I am a graphic designer. Sorry, graphic designers, and I'm certainly not that, but I am capable of putting together a design that looks pretty good just by using Canva and some of the editing tools that I have on my Mac. So a website, though, is really, I mean, it's visual, but it's really about words, right? How are we selling? Are we selling? Are we doing a good job or not? What kind of stories are we telling? If we're doing reviews, if we're doing affiliate work, we have to talk about these products that we use, right? Or products that we are analyzing without maybe using as of yet, at least to their fullest. So Dickens and any of these guys who are fiction writers can really give you great insight into storytelling, right? They'll keep you at bay intentionally, just like any good story framework, right? And storytelling is that, right? So if you are a writer, you probably are familiar with some of these books that we gravitate towards, these very much familiar, archaic is not the right word, but storytelling structure that has been around for eons, right? Greek storytelling is like it is today, just different a little bit. I wish I could remember the book, The Writer's Journey. It's classic, but I haven't read it yet. Joseph Campbell, based on Joseph Campbell's research into storytelling, which is fabulous, by the way. If you're not familiar with Joseph Campbell and you're not familiar with this idea of storytelling, it's basically how why we still love Star Wars, right? And many films are kind of based on this 4-act structure. And Joseph Campbell was a scholar who researched this sort of stuff, and he started out as a religion guy, I think, and branched off into a variety of different things. So worth looking into if you like the idea of story or just exploring it and trying to get a handle on things. But anyway, so that's what we're reading right now. Dickens. I'll probably be reading Dickens for a while. He's a very slow read, but very enjoyable, and it's a nice thing when you're talking about story. And speaking of story, another book that I happened upon just this week that I've been completely devouring is a book by, where is it here? So I recently signed up again for Kindle Unlimited. I have a kind of love-hate relationship with it. Sometimes I end up somewhat binging on Kindle Unlimited material, and then I run out of good things. I have to wait for an author to create some more new stuff. I don't use it for fiction. There's a lot of fiction to read in there. I use it for mostly nonfiction, and some of the stuff in Kindle Unlimited is very light. But this particular book that I stumbled on the other day, 2 days ago, I think, is just fantastic. So, and I was being a writer, I was a little inclined to ignore it, and I might have even seen it before, because I have read a lot of books on story. This one is called Marketing Made Simple, and it's by a gentleman named Donald Miller, and he has a co-writer, JJ something or other. I apologize, JJ, but I'll link that in the notes. But Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller, and it's kind of a marketing-focused book, a spin-off of his other big, huge seller, apparently, called Building a Story Brand, which I also then bought because last night my Kindle's telling me now I'm 42% through this book. So last night I was like 30-something. And this is a damn good book. I'm gonna buy his other book too, because he like teased me a little bit. So in the middle of I was at this particular point in the book, and he says, if you're familiar with the story brand structure or the story brand framework, then this part will be clear to you, or something like that. And of course I wasn't, so I was like, oh shit, what is I think on the cover of this Marketing Made Simple it says he's the story brand author. But I was like, oh shit, okay, probably buy the book. It wasn't on Kindle Unlimited, so I had to buy it. But that's right. That's really the only money I spend money. It's the only thing I spend money on: books, business, software and programs, food, and transportation. That's it. I kind of wear my clothes till they fall apart. And if you see in any of my videos, you'll notice I'm wearing kind of the same thing all the time. In the picture for the podcast, right? That's a white t-shirt. I wear white t-shirts and black t-shirts. That's it. If you're curious, maybe I'll link to the backstory on that. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller, fantastic book. Basically, what he does is he breaks down how to structure your website and the copy on the website so that it's geared toward making sales, right? And he runs a company that helps other businesses do this. He has a whole certified story brand guides, I think he calls them. So people who have learned this technique and then can go out into the community and teach people locally, or not teach people, but well, they might teach people, but basically they're helping people create websites that make a difference, that make sales, right? Because that's what our websites are basically designed to do. Even though yesterday I said not every article on your website is meant to sell, I still agree with that. The basic premise is to draw people in and get them to buy whatever it is you're trying to sell. If it's an affiliate program or an Amazon product, if you're drop shipping or selling things, or you're a consultant or whatever, we're in business to kind of move the needle for our customers as well as for our own pocketbooks, right? So that's what this book is about, and it's pretty cool. And it's very there's no hype in it, there's no bullshit. It's very straightforward. It's very much one of those books that you will go through and you will highlight, and if you don't do your due diligence and go back and actually do the things he's suggesting to do by looking at the notes that you might put in your Kindle or on paper, however you take notes, the book won't have the impact that it could otherwise have. So I'm finding it to be very, very helpful, particularly as I'm building out one of my other new sites. And I'm excited to see how it will work. I will be applying it to Nihon Hustle as well, which is perfect for that. And if you've been listening to me all week, I've been talking a little bit about product and offer. And this book seems like it's got a few good things to follow. So check it out. Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller and JJ. What's JJ's name? I should find JJ's name. It's so bad to not mention the poor gentleman's name. So, do you have a Kindle, by the way? They're like the coolest damn things ever. I have one of these old ones. It's black, about the size of a book. It cost me like $80, and I really can't. I can't live without it. I don't have my phone because my phone fell in the toilet. You can listen to that episode too. But I do carry this around because I need to read. And this is very important. So Donald Miller and Dr. J.J. Peterson. J.J. was working on his doctoral thesis when he was helping out with this book, it appears. So, but now he's a doctor. Good for him. So, as I mentioned, I also downloaded Building a Story Brand, but I haven't read any of that yet. What else am I reading? So Dickens and This Cat, and I just finished one of Jim. What's Jim's last name? Jim. I've just finished one of Jim Edwards' books. Jim Edwards is a copywriter. He's been around for a long time, and if you're familiar with Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels, you might be familiar with his. They kind of team up on things, and Jim has a product with him, funnel something or other, for doing copywriting for you, basically. But Jim's book was quite good, I thought. Another good book that's very tactical in nature, very much something you can learn from immediately and put into action immediately as well. If you go back and you do something with the notes that you've taken on the book. Really, really good book. A lot of copywriting books can be a little vague, I find. They're very good at teaching you kind of how they're very good at pointing out ads that have worked or copy styles that work, why you need to think a certain way, why you need to motivate a person in a certain way. But very few of them, at least that I've read as of late, are good at giving you kind of a model, a framework to kind of play with. Prompts, right? A lot of people like writing prompts. And I have this website that I've played around with that I kind of put on pause currently. It's called Headline Thief. So I basically created it to provide prompts for people who are in different niches and they need headlines. I'm quite good at headlines, and then I included this like 30-minute consultation thing and all this other crap because I wrote a book a couple years ago on for people in the mental health industry. It's something like I say it's 10 years worth of headlines, which it basically is if you write an article. If you take one of these headlines and you use it to write an article every month. But the basic idea with a headline book, or the website I was creating called Headline Thief, is to give people ideas, right? And that's what Jim does in his book as well. So he has little framework tidbits that you can play around with if you want to kind of tap into certain phraseology to motivate a person in a certain way, or to get them to kind of deal with a certain pain that they're moving away from or toward, which is kind of how this works. And what I'm finding fascinating about these books is, I'm familiar with this stuff, and I'm not trained as a copywriter, but I am an article writer and a storyteller in general. And so while I've always kind of felt like I kind of know how to do that, I only know a little bit about how to do it. I'm only kind of scratching the surface on my knowledge. And so Jim's book, as well as Jim Edwards' book, as well as Donald Miller's book, are quite good at kind of like shaking my brain up a bit and getting me to think in different ways. So I highly recommend both of them. Who else other than Jim? Of course, Russell Brunson. I started off this podcast because I was nearing the conclusion of Russell's Traffic Secrets book. I'm just about done with it. I'll probably finish it this weekend. It's a good book. I like it. He does a really good job of pulling apart different advertising strategies and for all of the big major social media platforms. I used to be on all of them, and I'm only on Facebook right now, and I'm on YouTube, and I'm only on Facebook for advertising and promoting the page, and that's it. And same thing with YouTube. I don't use the channels. Russell says don't use the channels to be social, and I don't do that. I used to. I started out on Twitter in 2007. And I built up a huge following, which was fairly worthless. I made a few connections, and I made some really nice little kind of ego boost. I had some ego boost interactions with some famous people that I've always admired, or just wanted to say hey to. And but it's kind of a nightmare these days. I don't like Twitter anymore. It's a huge waste of time for me. So I actually. I ran a few accounts. We ran one for Mapleopo, and we closed it down last October. And surprisingly, we used to think that we got a lot of traffic from Twitter, and we were spending all this time creating these beautiful like cards, like images basically to promote the content that we had written or translated both on Mapleopo. And it took a shitload of time. And my wife and I were spending more time. Not more time doing that, but we were spending so much time doing that in the early morning before our day jobs and at night that we were neglecting some of the other things that we needed to do in life as well as in work, our regular things that we like to do. And so we stopped. And the surprising thing was our traffic actually went up. So we haven't done anything with Twitter. We literally deleted the account. I went into my Doc Kane, Twitter Doc Kane account that's been up since 2007, like I said, and deleted everything as well. I deleted all of my tweets, all of my likes, all of everything, cleaned the shit out of it. It's just a placeholder right now. And I like it. It's like not having a phone. I don't really like... I feel like these things are kind of pushed on us, and the nightmare these days for me in not having the phone is all this fucking two-step verification stuff, and it's proving to me even more so that having the phone is just kind of a lock. It's like having a Dickens says like golden chains or something like that, golden handcuffs. It's just not. It's meant to kind of trap you in a way, designed to entrap you into a variety of services and habits. And I'm so glad I don't have it. And I tell you, when you don't have the phone, and I've gone through this many times in the last 10 years or so, when I put it away or I lose it temporarily, or it breaks, or batteries die, or whatever. And what happens is you notice that other people are not kind of living life. They're just looking at their damn phone. And it's really a problem if you're, or really noticeable rather, if you're around young people, as I am every day. So in Japan, on the trains, you see junior high school kids and high school kids all over the place. They're next to one another. They're in a group, but they're on their phones. In classes that I teach, kids are on their phones. You have to tell them to put them away. It's frustrating and annoying. And as an additional side note to that, I learned I had a really interesting experience this week, kind of interesting. So I was teaching this class of mine. I teach English here in Japan, and I was teaching these college kids. They're 19 and 20 for the most part. I was teaching them a little verse from one of the Beatles, a song from the Beatles called "Hide Your Love Away." And if you're my age and or hopefully even much younger than me, you know this song, right? You might not know the title, but you know it kind of goes like this. It kind of goes, "Here I stand, head in hand, turn my face to the wall," right? That's me singing a very bad John Lennon. So that's the song. So we went over the verse just to kind of the first verse to pull apart the language a little bit. I didn't even tell them it was a song. Then I had them guess, what do you think this is? Is it a story, a song? I had mixed reactions. I said, of course, it's both. And then I asked them, I said, okay, I'm going to play a little bit of it, and you see if you can tell me who it is. So I played that first verse, and not one single person knew who. First I asked, do you know the song? Just do you know it? Nobody knew the song. And I was like, okay, maybe you don't know the song. Do you know maybe who sang the song? Zip. Nobody had any idea. And then I asked, I said, okay, I'll give you a hint. So this band was the most famous rock band in the world ever. And one of the girls who grew up in kind of an international environment right away said the Beatles. But the other kids had no idea who the hell this was, who the song was by. And it was kind of shocking in a way. I mean, I recognize that as time goes by, people aren't exposed to the same sort of music. But if these kids are 20 years old, their parents are roughly my age. And people my age still know and love the Beatles, even in Japan. I came to Japan first to see Paul McCartney 4 years ago. And it was when I came that I decided to stay. And it was a sold out show in the Tokyo Dome, which holds something like 55,000 people. So people know the Beatles here. They're huge here. But these kids don't know the Beatles. And this isn't the first time I've run into this with classes. I've been teaching here for 3 years, and I run into this all the time, all the time. And I mentioned it to one of my private students today who is my age and who in a very cool way, used to be a singer. She was a rock singer when she was in her 20s, in the 90s. And she said, part of the problem with why these kids don't know this sort of stuff, because most kids in Japan of this age tend to like Korean culture or their own culture. They're into J-pop as well, which is great. Both of those are great, but it would be great if they were also exposed to other things as well. And she said a really interesting thing. She said that a lot of the reasons, or one of the reasons why they're not exposed to these things is because they don't do the sorts of things that we used to do when we grew up, right? So they're not really watching television. They're not being exposed to print media and newspapers and things of this nature. And if they are, it's so niche focused that they're not being exposed to other things, right? And but the big thing is these phones, right? They're on their phones all the time. So they're on YouTube or they're listening to iTunes music that they know and they like, and that's it. And that's why they don't learn anything, right? And it's sad. It's really sad. But that's the way it goes, I guess. But it's one of the reasons why I don't miss having a phone, but I would miss not having my Kindle. And I would replace my Kindle if it fell in the toilet. Because it's good to know all these different things. It's good to learn. It's good to put things in action. It's good to kind of get a schooling in a book, right? And from a wide variety of sources, right? So I'm reading Dickens, I'm reading a copywriting guy, I'm reading Russell Brunson if you're looking for a kind of hypey, click, boom, 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 sell, 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 sell. It's all different angles, all things you can learn from. But as I said, Russell's book is quite good. It's not so hypey at all, actually, and very detailed, and I would highly recommend it. You can get it for free if you click on the link in my description, and he'll send it to you. Just for the cost of shipping. It's a good book, though. Check it out. Another book I'm reading is just about Japan, because here in Japan, because I teach and I run into people, and I do have private clients, and I do some marketing consulting in some lessons and in outside of that as well. And one of the books, and so I started to think about this problem that we have here in Japan, where companies have products that are that should be globally focused products that are not getting global exposure. And the number one reason why they're not getting global exposure is because of language, right? Language and some cultural inadequacies, not inadequacies, some cultural propensities to not want to kind of go a little bit too far out of comfort zones. There is a norm in Japan that kind of follows that way of thinking. And then there are outliers, of course, right? There are plenty of companies that you know in your country. If you live in America, certainly there are many. If you're in Europe, there are many as well. So companies do, Africa, everywhere, right? There are companies that do go overseas, but it takes a certain type of management style and individual to make it happen. But there's a ton more that don't make it overseas. And I started to try and want to wrap my head around that because I see an opportunity there to help companies make this transition. So I picked up this book by a cat named Robert Peterson. He came here to Japan in the early 90s, I believe. Good time to be here. Lots of cultural exchange in the 90s. So he came here as part of advertising agency, I think, and he has ever since been working with Japanese companies to try and get them to expand overseas. So he has a book called Make It Happen, Japanese Companies. Let me click on it here. So this is one of the problems with reading too much, by the way. But I have this problem with film as well. I forget some of the details, but I remember the basic crux of things. Basically, it's like Japanese companies need to do stuff. What's it called? And Kindle is kind of a pain in the neck to navigate through sometimes. This book is all about why Japanese companies have this problem, how they can correct the problem, and how he's helped other people in Japan, other companies in Japan, make it happen, right? So, thus the name. Make it happen. Japanese companies need to elevate marketing as a core function to succeed outside Japan, is the subtitle. Robert E. Peterson. This is also a Kindle Unlimited book. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it if you're interested in Japan and business in Japan. It's cool. It's a little, what am I, where's the, sorry. I'm through it maybe 20%, 28% or so, and he hasn't got to too much of the meat yet. So I'm waiting for that. But I like it, and I'm expecting that sooner or later I'll see something that's very, very interesting. But it's an interesting book so far. What else am I reading? I started to read. So for a while I've been reading, nonfiction, right? So for a while I've been reading Nixon stuff because, believe it or not, Nixon is my favorite president. And I wrote to Nixon many, many years ago, and he was away. He was traveling in China, I think. Ironically, I'm reading about a book called Nixon and Mao right now. He was traveling, and I always viewed Nixon as a very excellent diplomat. And it was surprising to read in this book, this Nixon and Mao book that I'm reading, that it was really the only thing that Nixon felt he was good at. And I would say largely felt that he was good at. And it appears, the thing that he felt as a president was most important, that domestic policy could be handed down to just about anybody. And the company of America kind of ran well enough on its own to render his having to kind of be at the table every day thinking about domestic policy not necessary. That was quite fascinating to read, and it's really kind of cool, this book as well, to get a little insight into Nixon's personality. So I read Nixon's memoirs many years ago, and lots of people hate Nixon, of course, but his memoirs are superior, or superb rather, and of course it's written from his perspective, but it's very, very good. This book, in contrast, since it's written by someone else and many, many years after he's passed away, it's really cool to get insight into his personality. And the reason being is because we know about Nixon's character flaws, and sometimes they seem so strange, right? Or all the time they seem so strange. He seems like this kind of odd man. When you look at only those things. But having read his memoirs, I always had a different view of him, and I always, my uncle died in Vietnam, and Nixon was the president who was in office when we left Vietnam, right? So that meant something to me. Whether we say Nixon got us out of Vietnam or whatever, however you phrase it, he was there when it happened, right? So I always liked that aspect of his story. And so we know Nixon as being this criminally kind of guy, right? And you wonder, like, why did he have these behavior quirks, and why did he have these habits? This book is interesting because it sheds a little light on the idea that he didn't really like himself that much. And so he was always trying to make he was wishing for people to like him. And even though he did have friends, he even felt it seemed like these friends didn't really like him either. And you can see, like, if you're the kind of person, or you can imagine if you're the kind of person that bases so much of your importance, if you will, on the love of other people when you don't get it, or at least you think you don't get it, how that can kind of corrupt your mentality and your habits. And so it's quite a fascinating book. It's also really, really cool to read about how the Chinese dealt with us and coming over there for the first time. Nixon was the first president to ever go to China, and it's pretty cool how they like kind of played it cool. They're like, yeah. Apparently Mao like sent out, and his folks sent out these directives to the people in Beijing, not to kind of pay attention to the presidential caravan. There was no big welcoming party. Although there was a huge welcoming party for Selassie, who is their Kenyan president, or Kenyan whatever, I think, Haile Selassie, king maybe. People had flags and the whole deal, but Nixon got nothing, and so they're just totally playing it cool. Really, 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 really neat book. And so, what can you get out of it? History, obviously, but you can get politics, behavioral issues. How do people react? All of this stuff is great in sales and marketing, in life, just so you kind of know how to deal with people, right? What is it that people are made of? These sorts of books about big, important people with important shit going on, really, really, really good and fun to read. And so the other book I've been reading as well for a long time, on and off, is because it's a huge book, is this Life and Times of James Baker, which is fabulous. It's funny. It's very insightful. It's really cool to learn about the Bushes early on, and Cheney, and all these guys that also too have kind of a negative persona, depending on what side of the political discourse you've been for the last 20 years. They're all like lovable characters in this book. Cheney is funny, and it's pretty cool. So I like that book a lot, actually. Like I said, it's really long, but it's good. Another one I'm reading is, so I read all these books and they finish kind of right around the same time, because I'm reading constantly on the train, on the toilet, in bed before I go to bed, and when I'm waiting for my wife to get out of the shower or whatever. I'm always, always, always reading. So I read, or rather am reading, another book by Bob Bly. Bob Bly is a famous copywriter. Geez, I've been reading Bob Bly books for literally 20 some odd years. He's good. He's quite prolific. And this one is called Ultimate Offers, I think. It's good. It's like Jim Edwards' book, where you can pull a lot of things out of it. And I think that's about it for basically the ones that I'm like deep into at this point in time. I started to read a book about Ray Bolger, which I also recommend. And I am reading Something Wicked This Way Comes as well, too. And a book about Pink Floyd, which I'm almost done with. But I am reading, or I started reading this book on Ray Bolger. Ray Bolger was the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. And I'm very, very early into it, but what I thought was cool is Ray Bolger was the roommate of the gentleman who came up with the song for Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So I don't know exactly how that unfolded yet, but I think it's important. Another reason to read biographies, right? We can get so lost in this idea of like why we're not succeeding as entrepreneurs and why other people do, And I will keep saying until I'm blue in the face that what we hear and what we read is only a very, very tiny bit of the actual story. It's this whole like iceberg thing, right? The very, very tippy top of what of the iceberg is the only part that we can see. There's this huge base underneath, right? It's why the Titanic had some trouble. This is the way stories are online from any entrepreneur. And if you're reading an Inc. magazine or Fortune or Forbes, or you're reading stuff online, if you're in Warrior Forum, if you are reading anything, Authority Hacker, anything, right? You're not getting the whole story. You are not getting the whole story. So I finished a couple months ago. I read this book by about autobiography of Gene Hackman, autobiography of Gene Wilder. And the ways that Gene Wilder got lucky is just insane. I mean, he's a talented dude, and he hustled, as everybody does who makes it. But he got a lot of lucky breaks. And people say, well, he got lucky because he was in the right place, so he put himself in the right place. No, he was lucky, right? Just like Adam Enfoy was lucky, just like I'm lucky, just like you're lucky, right? And just like Ray Bolger, the Scarecrow, is lucky and happens to be the roommate of the guy who's been commissioned to write the song, he wrote several songs, for a Hollywood film called The Wizard of Oz, right? And, oh, Mom, we need a guy to play the Scarecrow. Would you like to do it? Like I said, I don't know how that unfolds, but these books are good because they tell you how people get lucky. James Baker, lucky. Lucky. Takes a break, gets a break rather here and there from people. He's born into a super ass rich family, but his family just wants him to be a lawyer, right? And then someone vacates a seat in the Senate or whatever, or in the House, I think, and he gets this push to kind of do something about it. He gets tired of being a lawyer, and then he decides, okay, I'll give this politics thing a shot. And he's doing it all in, this is crazy, he's doing it all in Texas, in the, I don't know, what the 60s, I think. He's doing it in Texas, when Texas, did you know this, was like all Democratic. How crazy is that? So he has Republican leanings, and everybody's a Democrat. LBJ was a Democrat, right? That's nuts. So talk about luck. They changed the whole damn way, the map of politics, of political leanings in America. How? Lots of hustle and lots of luck. Read some of these books. Don't just stick with stuff you know, right? Don't just read about sports. I'm also reading occasionally this book about Roger Staubach, and I have a book about Gary Carter too. I have so many damn books. I have hundreds of books on this Kindle, but I finish them. Sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes I do some in 1 or 2 days. One of Jim Edwards' books I read in an hour or so. It was very, very quick. But read lots of different things, right? Dabble. You don't have to read the things that I suggest, but play around in the Kindle store for a while. Get a Kindle if you don't already have one, because moving books around sucks. Take it from somebody who's moved like literally 18, 19 times. Maybe more than that, actually. So there you have it. May 19th, 2021. The first, I think, weekly roundup of books. I don't know what to call this thing yet. 52 weeks of reading. I don't know. It's nice to have something to talk about that isn't just business stuff, though. So hope you dug it. If any of these books work out for you, let me know. I will let you know, by the way, because I'm going to be implementing many of the tactics, if not all of the tactics, many of the tactics in Russell's book, and if not all of the tactics in the StoryBrand companion of books, or whatever they're called. And I will report back to you as I start to do that. So I'll start implementing some of that stuff this week, actually, because I am working on a new site, like I said, and I'll let you know how it works. So there you go. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a beautiful day, night, weekend, wherever you are. It's nice here in Kobe. I think it's a good night for wine, don't you think? Maybe some whiskey. I don't know. I have potatoes in the refrigerator that I made last night, so some whiskey and cold potatoes. Maybe wine is a better choice. All right. I'll catch up with you tomorrow for day 8. Have a beautiful day. Cheers. This is Doc signing off for now. Later.